Hey everybody, and welcome to the first official Swords and Sandals / Oliver Joyce Ask Me Anything. The questions are great. There's like over 100 questions that you guys have submitted in only a couple of days, and that's way more than I thought I would get. So we're going to have a bit of fun as I go through these questions. I'm kind of winging this off the top of my head. I had a quick look at the question list, but there are definitely some things I don't have the answer to, so we'll see how we go. There may be a couple of pauses in the video while I go and get a drink or something, because we could be here for a while. It could be a long video, depending on how long-winded my answers are. But firstly, thank you everybody for your questions, and secondly, let's get into them, shall we? All right. Question 1 from Strike the Valstrax. Will the new Swords and Sandals have the Swords and Sandals 3 art style? Probably not. I'm kind of hoping to go more back to the Swords and Sandals 2 art style. I feel like that is kind of the definitive Swords and Sandals art style. That is the one that everyone associates the most with Swords and Sandals. Having said that, we're experimenting, or I'm experimenting with a 3D model version of it. So depending on how that goes, we may be able to get gladiators that are big and hulking like the ones in Swords and Sandals 3, but still look a bit more like the South Parky style of the Swords and Sandals 2 gladiators. Question 2 from Strike. Will the new Swords and Sandals be on Android? Yeah, definitely will be. That's Swords and Sandals 6 he's talking about, which hasn't even been started yet, but we'll get into that in a later question. And final question from him. Will the new antagonist have a helmet like Antares? No. That helmet is definitely an Antares special, but the new villain will be revealed, and I think you'll be pleasantly surprised. Quite different from Antares, but we will see a nod to Antares in the next game. And he's been a bit of a fan favorite over the years, so I'm not completely writing him out, and I don't think he'll ever completely disappear from the series, but he is certainly not the antagonist in the next Sword and Sandals. All right, great question. Next question from Von Mack. Hey Oliver, why did Sir Belgrave's design change from a knight to a samurai? He was always a knight. The reason he looks like a samurai is because the artist, wouldn't say stuffed up, but I didn't give him a very good direction. I said the character looked kind of Asian, and he kind of assumed that they would look like a samurai. And so when I got the artwork back from Sword and Sandals 5, they looked a lot like a samurai. But it kind of makes sense because there is another character in the game called Daimyo Katsumoto in Sword and Sandals 2, and that character is actually lifted from The Last Samurai. If you've ever heard of that movie, the Tom Cruise movie, there is a character in that called Katsumoto who is a samurai, and I basically took it from that. So there is a precedent from the samurai armor, but Belgrave actually wears like Crusader knight armor. The one that you see in Sword and Sandals 5 isn't canon. That's just that's the only art I had for the game. Question 2 from him. If there is scope in the future, do you plan to take the worlds of Sword and Sandals beyond a point-and-click game? Something like a fully 3D third-person remake of Sword and Sandals 5, for example. That's a good question. It's a budget thing. Up until now, all the games have been made in Flash on pretty low budgets. Even when I was working for the old company, I was pretty much working alone. I'd have an artist now and again to work on the games with me. But they were done on such a shoestring budget and all done in Flash as well, so they're all 2D. 3D traditionally is it's meant for a larger budget. You've had a lot more expenses designing 3D models and so on. It's something I would want to do maybe in Sword and Sandals 6. Once that game's done, I definitely want to expand the world into not a full-on like Skyrim, 3D MMO kind of thing, but I would like to have a bit more of an Ultima feel to it, and that's a game I'm thinking about in the future, and I'll talk about that in a future question. You've heard of the Constellation Mirror game if you've been following along, but that is what I'm thinking for the future of Sword and Sandals. Still very much gladiator games, but I would like characters to be able to walk around the world a little bit more and interact with the larger world in the game. All right. Another question from Von Mack. Sword and Sandals 3 had some really cool arena champions with interesting backgrounds like Mossicles, the Venomous, Battle Maiden Anna, Platos, Platos, I think it was, Zanfather Haunted, and the Boneslinger, to name a few. Any chance we'll be seeing or hearing some more of them in upcoming Swords and Sandals games? Definitely a few of them should return. There was a couple of cool ones. The reason they weren't in the Redux Swords and Sandals 2 was purely an art issue. I only had those pretty simple sprites, and I was able to do a few armor sets for them. But the more complicated characters like Platos, which was made of stone, and the skeletal guy and so on, I didn't have the art for them. And even though I did all the art, they just didn't fit into the character models. But hopefully in Swords and Sandals 6 there will be a very a varied and dynamic character creator. So I want to be able to have characters that look like skeletons and things that are made of metal and stone and so on, so which would mean I'll be able to bring those characters back. And I have kind of promised, and I'm hoping to do this, to have a version of Swords and Sandals 3 inside Swords and Sandals 6 with all the arena champions, but using the new Swords and Sandals 6 engine. That could be a pipe dream, but I'm really hoping to be able to bring that to you guys when the time comes. All right, great questions. Thank you, my friend. Next question from It's Champ Zach. Can you give us any hints for the next Sword and Sandals game, and will you be adding any new features to the next game that you wish you added to Sword and Sandals games? Well, yeah, absolutely. The next Sword and Sandals game is most likely to be Sword and Sandals 6, unless I change my mind and do Sword and Sandals Crusader Redux in between. I'm still umming and ahhing because Crusader Redux is a much faster thing to do than Sword and Sandals 6, but Sword and Sandals 6 will be a purely gladiator arena game. Going back to the Sword and Sandals 2 style, quick combats and battles. I'm hoping to have a lot less of the gimmicks of the dungeon crawling, the mini games of Sword and Sandals 4, the pirates, all that kind of thing. I kind of felt like I really got away from what made Sword and Sandals popular in the first place, and that's just a pure fun gladiator game. This one is going to be set probably 10 or 20 years after Sword and Sandals 5, so any characters that are from the previous ones will be a lot older, other than a character like Chaos, who's got some kind of crazy magic on him, meaning he doesn't age the same as everyone else. Spoiler. And some of the more magical characters that don't age, like Bargle and so on, they'll all be back, and I'm hoping to bring many of the characters back and add new ones. I said in some kind of, I think it might have been the Discord channel, it might have been a throwaway comment, but I'm actually hoping to seriously have about 100 arena champions in this game, perhaps divided into Sword and Sandals 3 section, Sword and Sandals 6, that kind of thing. But I want the scope of this one to be the biggest, baddest, best gladiator game that I've ever made, and hopefully has been seen around. And it's going to have a lot of hallmarks and callbacks to the old Sword and Sandals games, but it's going to be an entirely new beast altogether. One more thing, will you be making a Sword and Sandals game based on Game of Thrones? It'd be great fun. I'd love to do that, but I don't have the rights to Game of Thrones. But what I would like to do, I'm going to explore this a bit, but if I could make Sword and Sandals 6 moddable and allow you to put your own faces on the gladiators and so on, maybe you could make one. That'd be fun, huh? We'll see. This is, a little way in the future. Next question is from Paper. Will there be a Sword and Sandals 6? You bet. That'll all be happening. It's going to be starting development on that towards the end of the year once Spartacus is done. And, as of course, pending Crusader. Maybe not. And would there be Sword and Sandals 4 Redux? Unfortunately not. That's the one game I don't think I can ever do a Redux of, because it's using all these old mini games from a long time ago. And many of them are like, 10 years old. And some of those mini games, here's a little bit of knowledge for you, were not made by me. I skinned them as far as I added the Sword and Sandals graphics to them, but they were done by other programmers that were working at the company that I used to work at. The story behind Sword and Sandals 4 was, it was a cobbled together series of mini games using the existing stuff we had. My boss decided it would be a great idea to just cash in on Sword and Sandals, bring one out as quick as possible, and do it kind of like, a series of mini games. I thought, well, that doesn't really feel like Sword and Sandals, but that's what we did. So I basically went through all the old games that we had to offer, took the code from them, and then hacked it in all the Sword and Sandals graphics. So to redo that would just be impossible. unfortunately not. Having said that, a lot of people do like the minigame style of Swords and Sandals 4, so it is possible I will try and include a couple of minigames in upcoming Swords and Sandals things. I don't know, the jury's out. A lot of people know this, but I'm not a fan of Swords and Sandals 4, mainly because of the development around it and the issues and the arguments I had with my boss about it. And it didn't feel like Swords and Sandals to me, but I know there are a lot of people out there that enjoyed it, so that's cool, and that is nice. I'm glad to see you guys care enough about it that you would like to see another Swords and Sandals. Alright, will the next game have online local multiplayer features or some kind of faction system, like a ranking system where you fight other creative gladiators in real time? Not real time, but there will be online multiplayer for sure. That is the one thing that, above all, everyone was requested. It is something that was in Swords and Sandals 3 for a little while before the servers broke. And I think that was almost, for me, the peak of Swords and Sandals when we had the multiplayer stuff working. It was awesome. There was literally thousands of players concurrently playing that game. And then the servers died and we didn't have the people to get them working again. And it was all a hot mess. I wish I could tell you more about behind the scenes of that, but that time really sucked. And I was so disappointed that Swords and Sandals 3 multiplayer Antares broke for everyone, and it never was the same again. So yeah, Swords and Sandals 6 will be multiplayer. As for factions, it's not a bad idea. You could ally yourself with a faction, maybe get certain bonuses for yourself in the faction. It just depends on how much budget and time I have for Swords and Sandals 6, but factions are a pretty cool idea, like Warcraft and that kind of thing. Thanks, Ajax, for that. The next question is from Shriveled Raisin. Great name, by the way. Big fan of that name. Hey, Ollie, will you consider making the new Swords and Sandals game? If so, you're going to return to the old Swords and Sandals 2 art gameplay style. I've kind of talked about this before, but yes, definitely making another Swords and Sandals game. And the art style will be the most similar to Swords and Sandals 2, but it may or may not be 3D. Thanks. His name is actually Jack, not Shriveled Raisin. Thanks, Jack. From Benjamin Guderian, will the multiplayer titles return on Steam? Greetings from Germany, love your games. Greetings to Germany. Been to Germany a couple of times when I was younger, and I loved it. It's so much fun. I went to Bavaria, and I went right up to the right up near Holland, at the top there, and I went to Munich, and which is part of Bavaria. Anyway, that's not really part of the Ask Me Anything, but I just want to say I love Germany. Great people, great country. And multiplayer Antares will sadly not return, but Swords and Sandals 6 will hopefully have multiplayer, and it will include some classic characters from Swords and Sandals 3. From Zumzi the Go Animator 2005, who's commented on these videos many times, great guy. Easter just arrived here. Happy Easter, my friend. Are there plans for any more assets like Samurai Armor or even games such as Swords and Sandals 1 Redux? No plans for Swords and Sandals 1 Redux. The Jewel of Heroes expansion, or was it Jewel of Chaos? I can't remember what it was called, for Swords and Sandals 2. That little extra content that I released a few months ago for Swords and Sandals 2 Redux was basically Swords and Sandals 1, so that's not getting a Redux treatment. No extra content planned for those old games, but really hoping to add so much armor in Swords and Sandals 6 that you won't, ever be wanting. Even having stuff that's moddable would be cool. I don't really know how to do it, but I've seen other games that are moddable, and people that make their own armor and weapons, and even adding their own faces and stuff. That would be amazing, wouldn't it? It's something that I could do if the game was 2D. I don't know if it's possible with 3D, but we'll see. I don't know. From Ruzgar Yasar, probably asked before, but what Sandals game are you making after Spartacus? Swords and Sandals 6. Spartacus has probably got about another 3 or 4 months in development, touch wood, knock on wood. That's coming along pretty well. I just want to get it out there. It's a platform game. It's going to be a good platform game, and I don't know if it's going to set the world on fire. And there's so much fan interest in Swords and Sandals right now that I really want to get back into that as soon as possible. From Clenched, aside from gaming, what hobbies do you have? Well, I love Lego. I've got some Lego sets on my little shelf here. I have Millennium Falcon here. It's kind of fun. I don't know if you can really see it in the camera. Let's have a look. There it is. This has lights, which you can... oh, the batteries are dying. Oh no, the batteries... Hang on, will they light up? Oh yeah, kind of lights up. There you go, but I need new batteries. But yeah, I have a bit of a Lego hobby. I love Lego. You can see the Ninjago city up there. That lights up too. Check this out. My wife is like, oh my god, what are you doing? Oh, there's the Falcon. It's all lit up now. Cool. Just like the real Falcon, it took some time to warm up. Let's put that back there before it's destroyed. My son is still too young to climb up the shelf and break it. I play basketball. I love basketball. Played competitively for about 20 years, but I've stopped in the last year or two. I want to get back into it. I love reading. Love going on hikes. My good buddy John Statescale and I, we always go on hikes together. But you know, programming games takes up so much of my time that, and also having a young family, that I wish I had more time for these hobbies. So my advice to anyone that doesn't have a family yet is get in your hobbies while you can. Just enjoy them, do them 12 hours a day, have fun with them, because when you have a little kid, you don't get that much time for it. But you still will find time. Like I've still found time to finish like Red Dead Redemption 2 and still made a couple of games and so on. So you can find your time, but it's just usually late at night. Anyway, sorry I digress. That was a long answer to that one. Right, where are we in questions? This is going to be a long video, so stay with me. From KBHD, there is a Screamer Easter egg in Swords and Sandals 5. Is that true? I'm not sure what a Screamer is. There is a creature that kind of runs at you in the dark and then gives you a bit of a jump scare. That's like a nasty creature. That could be the Screamer. But I'm not sure. If you let me know in the comment what a Screamer is, I'll maybe be able to help you in a future video. Alright, from Mohammed El Shami. Why old Sword and Sandals 5 not available on PC? Because it was tied into an old database and it had this really weird system. You had to buy gems on the website, then you use gems to buy things in the game. It was a weird system that the old company tried, and since the Sword and Sandals series is not in the hands of that old company, thank God, it's now with myself and E-Games, my publisher. The old version is no longer available, and it doesn't work anymore. That's why I made the Redux version using a lot of the old code, but so much of the old code was broken and tied to this database stuff that it's impossible to get working anymore. I can't even get working locally, sadly. From Magnu M00125, why was Charisma so good in Sword and Sandals 1, 2, 3 and then falls off after level 10 plus is not viable? To tell the truth, I've just always been a bit terrible at balancing my games. I am not that good at maths. That's the truth. That is the God's truth. When the characters are low level, it's much easier to balance out how much damage something is doing, and you can kind of see things. But as the game scales, I don't have the clever maths to to scale the attacks accordingly, and so that's why you often see the games are a bit unbalanced. Like the Yeti Project was a real hot mess. That boss was way too powerful, and the bosses after that weren't that powerful in Sword and Sandals 3. Charisma was unbalanced. It was powerful in Sword and Sandals 2 and then not powerful in Sword and Sandals 2 Redux and so on, which is why in the future I'm going to be bringing on more testers and getting people that know the systems better than me, just to kind of help me with the equations, you know what I mean? Because it does suck when you choose a strategy like Charisma and it's not as powerful as you want. From the Sunstrider, why in the collection of Steam Edition, in Sword and Sandals Classic Collection, the games have black boundaries when playing full screen? The reason for that is the very old original ones you get on Fizzy actually resize your screen using some special software that's no longer available. Didn't have access to that, so I basically put it in a letterbox mode. I didn't want to stretch the games because people's monitors are all different size and it just looks a bit crap if it's stretched. So I put letterboxing on them. It's a little bit annoying, but I think after a little while you get used to the little letterboxing, and that's the resolution they're designed for. Most of them are 640 in width, so most widescreen monitors are wider than that. And he also writes, "Thank you, Oliver, for the Sword and Sandals trilogy. Thank you, my friend. Why were they added in Steam? I'm not sure of the answer to that one. From Dark Lord Onion the Memer, another great name. Will there be a game focusing on how Antares became the evil emperor that we know and love? Probably not a full game, but I'd like to do some callbacks to that when I eventually do the full-on Ultima-style role-playing game, Constellation Mirror. I'd love to have some Antares backstory in that. And also, I am writing a big document called the Tome of Lore, which it's on my website, and you can find it there, but it's very incomplete. But once that's completely done, I'll be distributing that as a PDF file and making it available for everyone to check out. And there's just so much lore that's up in my head that I haven't documented that I need to get out there. But I'm trying to balance that with making the games. There's a whole bunch of comments underneath that, which are quite funny, but I'll ignore them for now. From Stephen Wilson, will you be making a multiplayer Swords and Sandals? You bet. As we've covered, both Gladiator-style battles and Crusader-style battles would work extremely well for multiplayer. Yeah, Crusader multiplayer would be awesome. That will be a complete rewrite, so it wouldn't happen in Crusader Redux, but if I ever did a Swords and Sandals Crusader 2, I'd absolutely do that multiplayer, and I'd probably try and do it a little bit more like real-time battles like Command and Conquer and Warcraft 2 and that kind of thing, because I think that lends itself really well to multiplayer. Also, Crusader and Android, if you have no plans to do multiplayer. Yeah, if I do Crusader Redux, it's coming to Android for sure. 100%. Thanks, mate. From Juliet Mia, will Spartacus and Swords and Sandals 6 both be on Steam? You bet. Steam has been really popular. It's been awesome. I'm so thankful that everyone on Steam has really embraced Swords and Sandals, especially with the Classic Collection. It's been unbelievable. I'm so happy with that. So yeah, you bet, my friend. From Napolizer, in the upcoming Swords and Sandals Crusader, will there be an online multiplayer? Yeah. As previous question, we'll see. Not in the Redux, but if I ever do make a Crusader sequel, there will be multiplayer. It's all about timing, you see. I've got this kind of rough document about when I'm trying to finish games, when I want the next one to come out, how long it's going to take. In my head right now, Spartacus 3 or 4 months. Sword and Sandals 6 is at least a year to 18 months. It's a big game. It's going to take a while. So maybe I can get Crusader Redux done in between them, because it's a long time in between Sword and Sandals games otherwise. But unfortunately, no multiplayer. From Danil Knyaz. Will you create cooperative Sword and Sandals where people can team up? That would be awesome. I don't know. It would be cool. Team-based gladiators. Maybe in the future. Can't say yes or no. From Farid Abdu. Will it be a great idea if you make the Magic Girl shop or Weaponsmith or the Armory Man as gladiators in Sword and Sandals? Yeah, that would be an awesome idea. I'd love to have a couple of those guys as actual arena bosses, because they never have been. I mean, John the Butcher was originally meant to be a shopkeeper, and then I made him an arena champion. But I would love to have the Golden Shield Armory guy. I think his name is Targan from memory. And Louis de Loungeville, the swordsman. They'll be getting very old now. By the time Sword and Sandals 6 comes out, those guys are, really pushing it. But, it'll be fun to have them as a little, as arena champions. And the arena shop Magic Girl doesn't have a name yet, even after all these games. But yeah, she's got to be in there. So yeah, I think it's going to happen. From Igorek Kornefel, Mr. Joyce, will you reveal the canonical universe of Sword and Sandals games? You bet, my friend. I'm definitely planning on, as I said before, I'm doing this whole Tome of Lore document, which is going to get bigger and bigger and bigger. I'm going to tie it all in together. Once I finish Spartacus, and even as I'm doing it, I'm writing the Crusader stuff, all the lore for that and all the story for that at the moment. Then I'm going to do Pirates, then Sword and Sandals 3, 4, and 5. So I've got a long way to go, but once I've done all that, I'm going to do the whole backstory. Basically like, Tolkien and George R. Martin, all those guys, all those really big fantasy writers have all this amazing backstory for their stuff. I want to get that out there, because this series is kind of becoming a bit bigger than me now. And I want you guys to be able to feel part of that world. And also, once you guys have that world, maybe you can do other things with it. Maybe do D&D campaigns with it. And when you have all the backstory and everything, it'll be a lot easier for you. But it's going to take me at least a year or two to get all that written. But I also thought about writing a book, like a novel. That would be fun, huh? But we'll see. When I get older, I'll have more time for that, in theory. Thanks for that comment, Egret. He said also writes, faithful fan of the series, and please keep making stuff. You have so much potential. I love your content. Thank you, my friend, and thanks to everybody that's taking the time to watch this video, because this is a bit of a long, rambling, one-way monologue. I'm hoping it feels like a bit more of a conversation from your questions, but I'm just so grateful that you guys care so much about Swords and Sandals that you'd even ask questions like this. It's from when I was originally making these games, basically in a vacuum, without knowing about all these fans on YouTube and Twitter and everything. Back in the old days, I had no idea how popular it was. I really didn't, and I wish I'd been in touch with you guys earlier, because it would have made things a lot easier. Especially when I had a big fallout with the old company and basically lost my job and couldn't make Sword and Sandals games. It was a bit of a dark time, but to know that there are all these great Sword and Sandals fans out there, man. It just makes things a lot easier. It really motivates me to keep going. From Crocodile Man 94, any plans to follow up on the Galactic tournament that was mentioned at the end of Swords and Sandals 3? That was a bit of a weird one. I'm not sure why I put that in there, but yeah, there are plans. Yeah, I think there are. I don't know how it could tie into Swords and Sandals 6, or maybe a spin-off, like some kind of that whole spaceship thing with Bargle at the end of Swords and Sandals 3 is based on an Astro Boy cartoon called The Greatest Robot in the World. I've always been a fan of Astro Boy, to the point where I have Astro Boy and this character, whose name is Pluto. He's got some blue tack on his leg. Pluto, or Bruton as he was known in the West, he's up there with little Astro Boy. Pretty funny. All right. But there's an awesome episode of that where basically 7 of the greatest robots in the world all compete in a sort of a big robot fighting tournament that this giant blue robot's going around destroying them all. They have to compete. And that was a huge inspiration for me. I was about 5 when I watched that, and I've seen it 100 times at least. And that really inspired me to make Sword and Sandals, have these gladiator tournaments, even though it was set in the future. And so I would love to do a gladiator tournament on these other planets where there are these kind of robot gladiators and things like that. Be a bit of a weird spin-off, but you know what? If this series is successful enough that I can do it full time, I can make these games in half the time, and I can maybe even hire other people to help me. And man, there's no reason why we can't do stuff like that. Crocodile Man 94 also asks, what is your favorite flavor of ice cream? Oh man, I love ice cream. Oh, I love ice cream. I'm going to be simple and say chocolate. Chocolate ice cream, just simple chocolate, doesn't need all the choc chips and bits. Good bit of chocolate, or just vanilla ice cream with some chocolate topping. Can't go wrong. But man, I'll eat any ice cream. I love it. What is my favorite color? Blue. Blue. What's your favorite color? Let me know. From Sandbag G45, are you a programmer or do you work in the computer industry? Yeah, man, that's my, I call myself a game designer, but I've made most of my money as a programmer over the years. I started working, here's how old I am. I'm 41 now. I'm getting old. By the standards of the internet and games and so on, I'm a greybeard veteran. I started working in pretty much 1996, and I left high school in 95, and I basically started working in a computer shop selling stuff. I did a technical college course about doing some programming and stuff, but I was a self-taught programmer. And then I did that for 3 years, just basically kicking tires, selling computer software and printers and stuff. I was very young. I didn't really know what I wanted to do, and I was making computer games on the side, just teaching myself. And I put them on all the computers at this shop. It was called Harvey Norman. It's a local, computer store chain. And people would ask me, oh, can we buy those games? And I thought, oh, yeah, maybe I could sell them. And so from there, I was a programmer at a multimedia place called Creative Engine. We made CD-ROM games. CD-ROM, not so much games as multimedia stuff, interactive things and websites and stuff like that. And then after that, I worked for an ad agency as a programmer, working on Flash websites and stuff like that. Then I was a programmer again at the company that I don't name anymore because we don't get on. But I was working there for nearly 10 years making games. And then from then, I've worked for myself and with Whiskeybarrel Studios. And still part-time, I work a few days a week working on children's education products, which they do. I work with this company that is huge in the kids education market, and these guys do fantastic sort of activities and games for young kids, and I sort of help with that and program simple activities like drag the cow onto the duck, or drag the letter C onto the cow, that kind of thing. But I do that part time, and I'm hoping in the next year or less to move to Whiskeybarrel Studios full time, so I can be a full time programmer. Long answer to that one, but I thought maybe you guys would be a bit interested in my career history. I will actually do a long video one day about my story, because I find that it definitely, when I talk to young programmers and game developers, they are kind of inspired, or at least curious as to how I kind of ended up where I am. And I think that's worthy of a longer discussion than that little one there. From Diego Rodriguez, question 1, will you make a new Sword and Sandals game? Yep, answer that. Will it be multiplayer? Yep, as we spoke before. Which is my favorite champion of the Sword and Sandals series? Oh, it's a tough one. I definitely change between them all. I mean, there's almost a favorite champion from each of the games. Weirdly enough, one of my favorite champions is actually from Sword and Sandals 2 Redux, and it's Ultra Flavius, who is like a kind of rock star pro wrestler type. He's kind of based on the lead singer from Van Halen, and he's also based on the Ultimate Warrior pro wrestler. I just love him because he's kind of former wrestling star. He's out of shape and he's in the arena, and he's a bit of a joke. I kind of think he's funny. From the classic Swords and Sandals games, I kind of love John the Butcher, just with his kind of just hat made of ham and his silliness and so on. Something simple about him. But I also like the Yeti project because it's the first boss that I ever made that actually was too hard for most people, because I always make the games too easy, and for some reason that one was a real challenge. So from Baihan Sub-Zero, why are there not fights like a 5v5 Gladiator, 1 vs 2, 1 vs 5, 2 vs 2 teams and co-op? I had planned that once when I was originally designing Swords and Sandals 5, but the game direction changed and I had to take it out. It's something I will do in a future Swords and Sandals. Probably not Swords and Sandals 6, but definitely something that will happen. Because we're going to basically try and make Swords and Sandals games for years and years and years to come. These games aren't going away. I'll keep making them as long as you guys keep enjoying them. And I do love the idea of 5 vs 5 team combat and kind of thing. From Ainomijo, is there any possible way to obtain Antares helmet in Swords and Sandals 2 Redux? Not possible, unfortunately, but it would have been cool. It has some kind of special power, which I've never revealed, that keeps Antares looking the way he does. And what are my plans for Swords and Sandals 6? Kind of answered that before, but yeah, set 20 years in the future. The plan is to make it pure arena combat. I want to have some really interesting tactical decisions. It's not going to be quite the same as the old ones. I actually think you're bringing in sort of XCOM style points-based combat, in terms of you can move forward and you can attack and you can defend all in one go, or you can use one big power attack and then duck. And each thing has a points value. Then the enemy does the same thing, and I think it would make kind of cool. Like, imagine a turn-based combat game where you could do 3 quick attacks in one turn. Damage, damage, damage. Then it's the next player's turn. Or you could do 1 heavy attack. That's what I'm aiming for. I'm going to be trying that with Sword and Sandals 6, and if it doesn't work, I'll go back to the traditional one. But that's the first plan with it. Story-wise, still up here. Haven't really revealed too much. I know who the bad guy is, but I haven't revealed that yet either, because I don't want to spoil anything yet. From X Baroni 1337, i.e. Leet. Question 1, will we get in Emperor Antares' childhood? Yeah, you're going to get that in the Tome of Lore document, and also as part of the Constellation Mirror role-playing game, which is several years before I even start that, but you will get that. Question 2, will we get Crusader Redux this year? If I make it before Sword and Sandals 6, I'm going to do a poll. I want to ask all the fans, what would you prefer? Would you prefer a delay on Sword and Sandals 6 so I could do Crusader Redux and take about 3 or 4 months, or would you rather just me start on Sword and Sandals 6 straight away? Last question, will we get other languages in Sword and Sandals? Hoping to get Sword and Sandals 6 done in other languages, French, German, Spanish, whatever is possible. I want to make it so I can translate it. previous games has been too hard to do, but now with Unity it does make it a lot easier to do stuff like that. So it's something that I will plan in, because I know that there are a lot of fans that don't necessarily have English as their first language. From Baron Wolfgang, who has a cool Wolfgang avatar. Will there be a DVD version of Swords and Sandals games, including Emperor Antares helmet? That'd be cool, like a collector's edition with a physical thing. Probably not, but I do want to make some Swords and Sandals merchandise one day. Little 3D collectibles that you could get, and maybe mugs and t-shirts. Would you guys be interested in that? That would be fun, huh? Like, I'd buy that. I'd buy a Swords and Sandals mug, like a, Antares mug or a Sir Belgrave t-shirt or something. If I can come up with a few of those, I will. It's all a time constraint thing, because I only get to do this on Mondays and Tuesdays, and at night sometimes if I'm not too tired. It's just hard to find time to do all this extra stuff, but I want to be able to do it. And so part of the reason I'm slowly building up to the point where I can work full time on it is so I can do all that. And we're getting there. I'm over halfway to my goal of wanting to do that financially, and we will see. There will be decisions made this year. I don't want to rush into it because I've got a mortgage and a family. Another question from Farid Abdo. We need a Shadow Warrior in Swords and Sandals 2, the right hand of Emperor Antares. There's no more characters coming from Swords and Sandals 2, but I do want to have like the shadow fight in Swords and Sandals 6 where you fight the evil version of yourself. That'd be cool. And yeah, Antares doesn't really have a right hand man. I guess in the Crusades, he kind of teamed up with Arglax and he Chaos, but there are a lot of betrayals in there, so they're not really on good terms anymore. And from Enga, the great man. Hey, Oliver, great idea with Q&A. Here's my question. Swords and Sandals 3 had these robots. How do you come up with them, and why are they canon? And why did they come up with them? Are they canon, and will we see them again? Yeah, they're canon. They're based on Terminator. I've always loved the Terminator series, and I've also loved Warhammer 40k, and in particular the robots called, I think they're Necron. So I was really inspired by both those things, and so I wanted to put robots in the game. And I just kind of went a bit crazy with Swords and Sandals 3, even just with the guitars and guns and robots. I took them out because the balance shifted and I want to get back into the more classic role-playing. But they will be back. They'll be back, whether it's in Swords and Sandals 6 or Constellation Mirror, but we will see them again. Because, of course, Bargle has headed off into the interstellar void to deal with those guys. What's the process behind making a Gladiator Arena champion, and how do you come up with the name, race, stats, lore, all that kind of stuff? Also from Enga. Good question. Really good question. Usually the process is... Well, for the old ones, I came up with the armor set first and then came up with a Gladiator that I thought fitted that. But as going forward, I want to kind of basically go through, have strong gladiators, fast gladiators, magical gladiators, ones that are good with swords. And once they do that, then I add the flavor to them. Once you get the sort of the mechanical part of them, then I go, well, that would be cool if this guy was like a Pacific Islander type guy, like from Tutuki the Volcano from Swords and Sandals 2 Redux. Or a more magic user one like Lumineshka. They change over the years as well. Like in the original ones, it was like pretty much all male gladiators. And in the more recent ones, I've added more female gladiators because there are more female fans of the series than there were before. And I want to, basically be a bit more inclusive. And there's also more gladiators that are robots and monsters and that kind of thing. It's something I think about all the time as far as like, oh, it'd be cool to add this gladiator or that gladiator. And then I forget most of them. But the ones that I sort of still remember end up making the final cut. And in Swords and Sandals 6, I did say I want to have over 100. Man, I really hope I can. I might be exhausted by then. But I want to make the process easier for me to make arena champions. In which case, you'll just see some really interesting ones. Ones from the past that we've seen before, but many new ones. And the last bit he said was, keep up the good work. Oh, thank you, my friend. Appreciate it. All right. We're about halfway through the questions. So let's pause it for a second. I'm going to get a drink of water, and then I shall return with more answers for you. Wow, what a cinematic transition that was. Definitely don't quit my day job to become a director, because that was pretty awful. Where were we, my friends? Where were we? Well, Eric Johansson writes, how would you describe Chaos the Scourge and the Legion of H? Are they fanatical lunatics, but also incompetent backstabbers? What made the tyrant of Edingarth who he is? It's a great question. They are both. They're fanatical lunatics and also incompetent. Fanatical lunatics at the highest level, incompetent backstabbers as well in the middle ranks, and at the lower ranks, there's a lot of time they're just people that are trying to get a paycheck. So the Legion is basically based on the Roman legions, with a bit of madness thrown in, a bit of a mad emperor thrown in there in Chaos. He himself is a lunatic. He's not right in the head. He's been corrupted by a magical power, which I haven't really gone into yet. It's a bit to do with his helmet, which kind of contains this power. And he started off as a young man, just a bit of a hothead. He was an orphan who was taken in by a kindly knight who had connections with King Lionel, or Prince Lionel at the time, and his family, and Sir Belgrave, and even Wolfgang. And they all had aristocratic backgrounds. And he Chaos, when he was formerly known as Hector Carolus. The father's name, the knight's name was Carolus, so Hector took his name. He was always just a troubled child, and then he had a friendship with Belgrave and Wolfgang before they fell out over a girl, as you do. And something snapped in him, and he basically went off the rails, and something happened to him that a little bit is revealed in the Spartacus game. I'm tying that in a little bit to Swords and Sandals as well. But he is never the same after that, and he's not quite human anymore, and he has this sort of powers of hypnotism, and becomes quite a good speaker, quite a good orator, in the same way that a lot of the dictators of World War II and so on were. But he's also incompetent and ruthless, and he hires people who are the same. They make a lot of big mistakes, and there's a reason that the Legion hasn't taken over all of Brandor. It's because they are so incompetent and easily manipulated by people like Antares and so on in the Crusades. But Chaos will have much more of a backstory in future games. And Constellation Mirror, which is the one I keep coming back to, the Ultima style one, is going to deal with a lot of this. It's going to have tons of lore in it, and that's why it's going to take years to make it. I'm only going to make it if I'm making enough money from this series that I can afford to basically work full-time and do it all. Because, games like that take a long time to make. Another question from Farid Abdo. Cheers, man. Thanks for all the questions. I appreciate them. What I like about Swords and Sandals 2 Redux is to take weapons of the enemy after defeating him and his helmet or head protection and taking some money. And is it possible? Can you add this to Swords and Sandals 2? Nothing's going to be done on Swords and Sandals 2 Redux anymore. That's pretty much done. It's in the bag. I've got to move on to the next series. But certainly Swords and Sandals 6 will have the ability to take enemies' weapons / armor and customize them as well. So you'll be able to add, lightning gems to make things glow with lightning power and that kind of thing. I want to make it all customizable. And it's certainly one of the fun things about Swords and Sandals 2 is taking the Arena Champions helmets and wearing them in the future. And I want you to be able to do that. From Overseer Matthew, why is it called Swords and Sandals? It's a great question. This is a really good question. Originally, the first title for the game when I was young was Who Wants to Be a Gladiator? And that was based on a game show at the time called Who Wants to Be a Millionaire? And it was meant to be a bit of a joke on that. But it didn't really stick. And then when I started working on this game for the old company, I was thinking of a few different names, and I wanted something that sounded kind of ancient Rome and gladiator-esque. And my boss at the time, who was a buffoon and a real David Brent type from The Office, had the genius idea of calling it Unhappyators. Unhappyators, because they're not gladiators. They're not glad to be in the arena. They're unhappy. They're Unhappyators. And that kind of gave me a bit of a clue as to who I was working with. My God. The stories I could tell you guys. But anyway, I came up with Swords and Sandals instead. And that is actually based... It's a genre of movie that was very popular back in the 1930s to 1950s and 1960s, starring Charlton Heston and Ben-Hur, and Spartacus, of course, was one of them. The Bible movies, the Ten Commandments, and so on, were all set in ancient Rome and they were called Sword and Sandals movies, or Swords and Sandal movies, and that, surprisingly enough, had never been used to name the game. And I thought, wow, that name is free. So I grabbed it. and ever since I've been so lucky to have that as a name. That's one of the biggest things that has made the game series for me, is the name. From Nemvas, why did the character graphics in Swords and Sandals 5 change back to the original? I really like the new style. The new style was cool. It was done by an artist called Jared Blanthorne, who was a friend of mine. And actually, we worked together at this kids' educational company when I work out a few days a week still. But at the time, he wasn't available. And also that style, it kind of felt out of place with the rest of the game. And I wanted to create some new things for the game. And I needed new art. And because I was doing the same game engine for Swords and Sandals 2 and Swords and Sandals 5 Redux at the same time, they need to have the same character system. And so I redrew it all in the style of Swords and Sandals 2. The ones from 5, some people liked, some people didn't. They were pretty cool, but they just they didn't really feel Swords and Sandals-y to me. And I want those gladiators to feel consistent throughout the game series going forward. I know Medieval, Swords and Sandals Medieval, has a different art style again, but the story behind that one is that it was a different game altogether, done by a different artist, and it was originally called You Are a Knight, but I had some problems releasing that, but eventually was able to get the rights to it again, and I brought it into the Swords and Sandals world. It's set on Earth, of course. It's not actually has nothing to do with the Swords and Sandals story, but the game engine is the same, so it's technically a Swords and Sandals, technically not. It's a weird one, but that is why the official Swords and Sandals art style is the art style from Swords and Sandals 2. From These Radies, really butchered your name, I'm sorry, my friend. My question is, if there might be multiplayer in the next Swords and Sandals, can we expect only online battles or cooperative questline? Probably only online battles at this stage. I'd love to do a cooperative thing, but you have a bit of a scope creep in these games. When you want to add all these things, you kind of you eventually run out of time and budget, and it would be cool to do cooperative stuff, but for now, no plans to do that. Having said that, you never know what might happen in the future for future games. But thanks for the cool question, man. He also writes, imagine traveling around Brandon with a band of adventurers you and your friends are fighting in wars, arenas, dungeons, and becoming the most infamous warriors, mages, rogues, Brando's ever known. What a cool idea that would be. That would be unreal. And that's kind of getting into the sort of MMO style World of Warcraft territory. If a game like Swords and Sandals 6 blew up, if it really did well on the Switch, for example, and all of a sudden I make $1 million, way more than I've ever made. Imagine that. I would absolutely pour money back into the series and go, man, let's make a big budget Swords and Sandals as multiplayer and everything. Man, why not? It would be awesome. But until then, only going to be combative multiplayer. But great statement. I love it. From Sam Sampson, will there be a 3D graphic game of Swords and Sandals or something like that in the future? Yeah, 3D is planned, depending on if it looks good or not. My buddy Jeff Wicks and I are actually working on right now some styles for 3D Swords and Sandals. I want to see if it's possible. If it kind of doesn't look like the characters anymore, I probably won't go with it. And also depends on the whole moddable thing. If the gladiators are going to be moddable, I don't know how possible that is with 3D, but we'll see. If it is possible, it'll be 3D. But I still want them to feel like Swords and Sandals characters. From Aqua Twisty, on Swords and Sandals 1, how come enemies are able to use Swords and Sandals 2 weapons and armor? If they have no weapons or armor, then they use the Swords and Sandals 2 things. I think what he's talking about here is some characters can use weapons and armor that their stats don't necessarily allow. And that is basically a logic bug from me. I'll sort of check the character level, but sometimes I don't check, if their stats are good enough to wield certain things. Sometimes these games, I make them fairly quickly, and I put a lot of thought into them, but sometimes not as much as I should. And I do the AI pretty quickly, and I try to make it as interesting and fun as possible. But to be honest, people play these games way more than I do. Like, I make them, and I spend time playing them while I make them. But once it's done, I very rarely play through it, and often that can lead to issues like, oh man, that character's using a helmet that's 4 levels too high. Which, if you played through the game yourself, you would know that. But because I'm so burnt out on making them by the time they're done, I kind of don't want to play them anymore. Which is kind of terrible, and I do want to apologize to all you guys who are frustrated with the issues and thorns in the balancing of the games, and it's something I really want to fix up for Swords and Sandals 6 going forward and be a bit more professional about how I do things. So from Ecolusian, what was the main reason for the change in style in Sword and Sandals 3 and 4, from 3 to 4? That was because of David Brent, my old boss. His name isn't David Brent, but David Brent is a character from The Office who was very incompetent. And, I think there's some... Anyway. But the reason was, we wanted to make a quick cash in on Sword and Sandals 3, build one as quickly as possible using existing minigames, and I had to somehow put it all together and make it into a weird... I kind of based it on Mario Party. If you remember Mario Party, it was a bit based on that. Also, how did you create the music for the games? And if you didn't, who did? Your games have stood the time in a kind of spaghetti western kind of way, and I'd love to learn more about the development. Thanks, man. They are kind of like spaghetti westerns. They are really cheesy, and they look dated and ridiculous when they come out. But 10 years later, they still look ridiculous, and if I don't say so myself, a little unique, and they have their own charms. As far as the music, I usually write the music on a music keyboard. I'll come up with a theme for the songs and so on, and in my head the melodies. For the original games, I did them all, and I did the singing like the Gladiator, Swords and Sandals, that kind of thing. I won't get too carried away. My voice isn't what it once was as you get older. But I, these days, will write the original track and I'll record it, and then I'll usually give it to a composer. I've been working over the years with a really wonderful guy from Brazil. Shout outs to everyone in Brazil. How are you, my friends? And a guy called Adrian Galassi, who has been a phenomenal musician for many years. Even though he's still a young guy, he's the composer I've used the most, and he would take my compositions and make them sound really cool. So for the Redux games, for Sword and Sandals Medieval, for Pirates, he did all the really cool sounding ones. So if I did the old ones, he did the new ones. But the actual Sword and Sandals theme, I came up with do 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 do. That was me. All right. Where are we in this epic rant? From Mateus. Hello, what do you think about adding more evil characters like Antares into the universe? It will create more interesting events, factions, monsters. You're right. Antares has been the villain for so long that it's time to... and he basically gets defeated in Sword and Sandals 5, spoiler. But it's time to bring in more villains, and I have a bunch planned. And Chaos is also a villain, but a bit more of a minor villain. Same with Arglax. But you will see in Sword and Sandals 6 and Constellation Mirror, you will see many more villains come in. Because at the moment there are more heroes than villains, and that's a bit of an issue. From Christian Platt, what's your favourite game that I've designed? Of the Sword and Sandals games, my favourite was Sword and Sandals 2, because I feel like that was perfect and simple, and I basically ever since then have kind of messed one thing up or another. Like, every game since I did something wrong, but Sword and Sandals 2 I feel like was pretty much perfect. Of the non-Sword and Sandals games, my favourite game was a game called Death Row. And it was like a prisoner Tamagotchi. Basically, you had a prisoner on death row that you had to try and keep alive for a couple of weeks. And he was innocent. And you had to find clues and keep him motivated and train him and so on. You can find it on, I think, Newgrounds and other Flash websites. It's called Death Row. So check it out if you are interested in some of my games. Good question. Thank you, my friend. From KOTOR HD TV channel. How'd you come up with the names for most of your characters, in particular characters from Crusaders? As you may have noticed, I'm a fan of Crusaders most. Yeah, we've talked about this. You're a big Crusaders fan. That's awesome. Most of the characters were named by myself and my old buddy Greg Bernard Wee, who is the inspiration for Sir Belgrave. We came up with these when we were playing D&D, Dungeons and Dragons, back as 10-year-olds, 11-year-olds. Those are the names of our characters. I was originally a knight called Sir Lionel, who, when I had to leave the school that I was at, and I changed schools, and I was no longer playing D&D with these kids, they basically made him into a king to honor my character, and he became King Lionel. And then Redkin O'Hara, who... Oh, actually, that's the characters from the future Sword and Sandals. You haven't heard of him yet, but you will. Another one of my characters. Wolfgang was one of my D&D characters. Greg and I came up with Brandor, the world of Brandor, and we named most of the characters within Chaos and so on. Antares came much later. The name Antares is based on a star, and one of the biggest stars in the universe, one of the biggest known stars. And the other ones are, I feel like, I don't know, I feel like I have a bit of a talent for naming things. It just sounds like I'm kind of, upping myself, big up kind of thing. But I feel like I have a little bit of a gift for naming things in an interesting way. And when I hear a name, I try and keep it in my head until I can think of an interesting character to use for it. Because have you noticed, if you ever read a lot of fantasy books, sometimes the authors, they just have really kind of not a lot of skill for naming things. Every character might have the letter A in the name, or it just doesn't sound memorable. George R. R. Martin is a great namer of characters, and I've really been inspired by him in recent ideas. But then I also read a lot of Raymond E. Feist, who is a great author, but a lot of his characters just all have names with the letter A in them. Anyway, ranting. Real rant. From Armored Pigman, did something inspire you to make John the Butcher? Maybe you know the answer to this, because I've sort of talked about this before, but John the Butcher was based on a guy called John Woolridge, and he was actually a butcher at the local shops when I was a kid. And he was a larger-than-life character, very loud, had a red hair and a beard and a bald head, and he would always yell, come and get your sausage on Saturday morning, kind of thing. And I ended up, one of my very first jobs was working for him. And my job was to go out and clean all the meat machines and scrape all the little bits of sausage and gristle and hose it down, go into the cool room and stuff like that. I lasted less than a week. And he basically said, "You're too weak to do this job." And he was right. I was hopeless. I was about 12 or 13, didn't know what I was doing. But he gave me $5 and sent me on my way. And at the time I was like, "How dare you fire me?" And I said, "I'll have my revenge." And I carried that with me for many years, and eventually immortalized John the Butcher in Swords and Sandals 2. So he's been killed many, many times over by many millions who don't realize that that's actually John Woolridge, the butcher from my local shops. Who this is 30 years ago. I have no idea if he's even still alive now. From Mi Dicen El Grando Esmocchio. I love that name. When you make Sword and Sandals 6, are you going to use the Sword and Sandals 3 models or 2 models? Thanks for reading. Sorry for my broken English. No, your English is great. Like, honestly, I'm guessing your first language is Spanish, probably. I don't speak a word of any other language. And so anyone that, has a second language like Spanish or Italian or, whatever, and can communicate in English, I'm in awe of you. I'm just, in Australia, we don't learn other languages. So please never apologize for your English. To answer your question, yes, Swords and Sandals 2 are the character models. 3 were kind of fun, but they're a little hard to deal with, and they probably won't be used again. From the Pro, what are the plans for the series after Swords and Sandals 6? Constellation Mirror is the main plan. If things go well, I will make that big Ultima style role-playing game. I wouldn't mind making a couple of non-Sword and Sandals games. I really want to make a pro wrestler game set in the 80s, where you kind of take a team of pro wrestlers around America and fight stuff. That would be cool. It depends. I mean, it would be nice to take a break from Sword and Sandals, but because there are so many fans and there's so much momentum going with it, it's kind of hard to. But I'm going to be making games for as long as I can, and as long as you guys keep playing them. Thanks for the question. It was a great question. From ZZZZ. I got a question about the Redux games on mobile. I noticed that after every move that the player on the CPU is performing, the moves towards the end, they lag or they just stop, and sometimes the character doesn't return to its idle animation after performing an attack. They're just kind of stuck on the last frame of the previous animation. So is that a bug? Yeah, you know what? It probably is. It's either a bug or just some kind of technicality in the way that things were made. Because these games were designed for mobile, when you're programming, you have to have a logic frame. So a time when you're making in the combat, when all the stuff is worked out. And usually that's at the beginning of the turn or the end of the turn. And often there's a lot of like AI decisions where it's going to go, I'm going to do this, am I going to attack, what weapon shall I use? And it goes through all these kind of loops. And sometimes that can get a little bit taxing on the graphics, on the CPU. And sometimes you just see a bit of a pause like that. That might not be what you're talking about, but sometimes that's why you see frame jumps. I tended to basically, at the end of attack, I'd have it pause, then I'd have the logic decided, and then I'd go to the next move. It was a little bit clunky, but that's the reason behind it. Either a bug or I maybe just couldn't fix it, but hopefully it's minor enough that didn't really, affect the games too much. There are bugs in these old games that I've just never been able to solve, and I would have loved to if I knew how to. But, I was working on these things for so long, and I'm aware of a lot of them, and I would love to be able to fix them, but you can stare at this code for hours and look at one line and go, man, I just do not know how to fix that. And that's just the problem with all those games, is that, there are gladiators that skip turns in Swords and Sandals 2 Redux. I know about that, and I hate that happens, but I've put in all these kind of safeguards and so on, but they still do it. And, the anvil in Swords and Sandals, I think it's in Swords and Sandals 2, and it might be in Swords and Sandals Medieval, that it, after a while, just comes down and squashes the gladiator. That's in there because sometimes the gladiator's logic gets stuck, and they literally don't know how to do anything. The gladiators are stuck there, waiting for a turn, and the game can just glitch out. So I put a little bit of code in there that said, after 10 seconds, if that happens, squish them. And everyone thought that was just a fun Easter egg, but that's the reason behind that. All right, so from PowerRit131, can you update Swords and Sandals 2 Redux on Steam? I found a bug. Every time I create a new gladiator and type in my name, it gets created with a random name. I actually fixed that yesterday, so that should be up. You should be able to download that now. From Poino Kuma, do you have children? In case you do, what would it feel like to introduce them to your games and see them have fun with them? Both of your creations, one because you love and one because of your creativity and other factors, right? Hey, that's an awesome question, my friend. And you're right, I've thought about it a lot. Yes, I have one son, Isaac, who is 15 months old yesterday. Crazy. And he is the love of my life. He and my wife are the loves of my life. They are what I live for. They are everything to me. And it changed my life. Having kids has changed my life. I will introduce him to my games at some point. Probably when he's old enough to kind of understand them a bit. Maybe sort of when he's 5 or 6, that kind of thing. I want to go through playing these games with him and hopefully get his feedback and bring him into the series. Maybe have him as a character. I think he'd enjoy that. I want to teach him to program, teach him to make games. If he doesn't want to make games, great. He can do something else. But I think going forward, he is basically the successor, and maybe one day he will continue the Swords and Sandals series when I'm gone. If for some reason we're still doing this, in 40, 50 years' time, he will be the one doing the ask me anything questions via holograms, and, we'll be all in virtual reality, and my ghost will be floating around somewhere, and he'll be doing the questions. But I feel like Isaac, I will introduce him to the series, and one day he'll continue it. That'll be amazing. Imagine that. And your children will be playing them, hopefully. That'll be cool. From Sean Palmeya Labasan. Again, sorry if I butchered your name. He has 5 questions. Okay. What was the fearful prisoner's real name? We don't know, but it's probably something really boring, like Kevin or Bruce or something. He was a tourist, a poor guy. He was on a tour group, and he got wandered off from the main group, ended up in the arena, and ended up fighting 10,000 battles and became an arena champion. His story may not be done. We should bring him back for Swords and Sandals 6, right? Just for fun. The species Drakendeer is not really a species, more of a race, really. Or it's a city. They're basically loosely based on Asian culture, Asian appearance with a medieval crusader sort of culture. But are they soldiers or knights? Samurais or knights? They're knights. The only reason they kind of look like samurais was because of Swords and Sandals 5. And I think, it was a bit confusing because of the Swords and Sandals 2 character. But going forward, they'll be wearing medieval knight armor. The samurai armor is probably done for now. Question 3. My friend Kent. G'day, Kent. How are you, mate? He said the champion's armor is the most powerful armor, but there was no armor called champion's armor. Is it true or false? I don't remember. I actually don't remember. I think the most powerful armor is it legendary armor? You let me know in the comments. I don't remember. And again, Kent, who's obviously played a lot of Swords and Sandals, he said there are sais, as in the referent weapon that Raphael the Ninja Turtle used. Is this true or false? There are sais in Swords and Sandals 3, I believe. I drew the images. I don't know if I ended up using them. You can hack the old Swords and Sandals games and go through the images. I know people have, and you find some unused weapons. I believe sais were designed for Swords and Sandals 3, and they may or not be in there. Question 5. What race or species is Lord Antares? He is Eldorhathian from the continent of Eldorhath, and they're like an Egyptian-style people that, live in pyramids and have a bit of a death cult thing going. They are typically sort of purple, almost black-skinned, all much taller than your average person, 7-8 foot tall on average, with weird purple eyes, and you'll find out a lot about them going forward. We haven't heard the last of the story of Antares, even though he's been defeated. From the Crazed Hunter, who is probably the best Sword and Sandals player I've ever encountered. He knows more about the mechanics of these games than I ever will, and has finished them a million times. Is Bargle Yarg an omniscient being? No. He's a precursor, and the precursors were one of the first peoples to enter Brandor. He's a little bit like your Gandalf's, sort of the magical figure that lives many, many, many hundreds of years, but he's doing it via magical means. He's not immortal. He just has ways to keep himself alive. We'll find out more about him too in future series. And he's not good or evil. He's just, has his own interests. From Arnus Gausis, will Sword and Sandals be on Android or iOS? Unfortunately not. The code is just way too messy. I'd love to have been able to bring it to those platforms, but it can't be ported, unfortunately. But Sword and Sandals 6 will have a Sword and Sandals 3 element to it, and hopefully you get to play all those old arena champions again. From Yohiko, S135, Saludos desde Uruguay. Sword and Sandals 3, fui mi infancia. I'm guessing you're basically saying Sword and Sandals 3 was my childhood. Correct me if I'm wrong. But, hey to Uruguay! How you going? I'd love to visit South America. And, countries like Uruguay and Brazil. And, that's the one continent that I just really wish I had been able to visit when I was younger, because I never got to see it. And perhaps when I'm older. And Uruguay just looks like a beautiful country, mountains and beautiful forests and so on. It's just spectacular. My main memory of Uruguay is the Australian soccer team, the Socceroos, facing them off for a World Cup playoff spot many years ago, and I think we beat you guys. Uruguay is obviously way better at soccer, football than we are. So, thank you for the comment, and so humbling to have been a small part of your childhood. I say that a lot, but I honestly mean that. It's humbling. It really is. To have created something that people are nostalgic about. I'm nostalgic about my own childhood to the point where I'm over 40. I'm 41, and I'm still nostalgic about He-Man. I have He-Man figures on my shelf. And are they adults? Are they grown parents with their kids will come round to our house, and we have a house and a car and kid, and we're grown-ups, my wife and I. And I still have this shelf of things from my childhood, Transformers and He-Man and so on. And so I believe nostalgia is very powerful, and I'm so humbled and proud to be part of a nostalgic part of your childhood. And hopefully I can make some little figurines that you can have on your shelves one day. That'd be cool. So we're nearly towards the end. From Knight, how many bosses will have the new Sword and Sandals 6? Let's say 100. I'm really promising a lot. It might be less, but hopefully 100. Will the new Sword and Sandals opening have the epic guitar solo, and we'll have Easter eggs from the old Sword and Sandals? Probably won't have the epic guitar solo because some people love it, some people didn't love it, but I will have an all-new Sword and Sandals theme for Sword and Sandals 6, which you haven't heard before. And this is going to have tons of Easter eggs. This will have more Easter eggs than any previous Sword and Sandals game you've ever played. There's going to be references to old characters, cameos, old locations, new locations, expanding the world. It's going to have everything that you could ever want from Sword and Sandals, including multiplayer. That's why I'm so kind of keen to get started on it, because I know it's going to take ages. And will the fat kid be in the game? You bet. Little fat kid. He's got to be in it. It's not so. He's the only character that's been in every Swords and Sandals game, I believe. From Charlux, who is another great fan of the series. I recognize that game well. If you go back in time, what would you change in your life and why? The easy answer is nothing, because it's taken me to where I am today. I wouldn't have been in this moment talking to you guys if I hadn't made all the mistakes and done everything in a certain way. What I would have done, though, is from a professional level, I would never have given up the rights to Swords and Sandals in the first place. I was young and naive, and allowed someone else to trademark them, and I never got them back, although at least now I have some kind of ownership stake in them with e-games. So, that was one of the huge professional regrets of my career. And the other thing was, I wish I'd quit the old company many, many years before I did. I gave them some of the best years of my life, and it didn't end well. And I wish I had the courage and confidence to strike out on my own and start Whiskeybarrel Studios a lot sooner than I did. But, it's easy to say don't live with regret, but know that you can change your future. All life is peaks and troughs and valleys and great moments and dark moments, and life is fickle, man. Like, you never know what's going to happen next, and you can be, as the old song, I think it might be, Sinatra or Dean Martin, one of those guys says, you're riding high in April, you're shot down in May. You never know what can happen. You can be on an absolute winner, and then all of a sudden everything goes wrong. But conversely, you can be down and out and feeling like you got nothing and you're lonely and the world sucks and so on. And then you meet one person that changes everything. So I think the most important thing is to try and not live with regret, but be nostalgic about the good things in the past, but try and bury the bad things. I'm not always the best at doing that, but I try to live forward with hope, and not just hope, but plan for the future, and do what you can to put yourself in a position to be lucky, because there is luck, but we do make our own luck. You got to be in the right spots. Anyway, that's my kind of be the best you can be inspirational speech. Take it with a grain of salt. From Kalen F2P, and I just realized the camera is shuffling a lot. I'm sorry, I've been sort of leaning on the table a bit, so I apologize for the shaky cam footage. From Kalen F2P, for those who pledged you on Patreon $25 or more, how many times do you have to pledge do you have the character created for us? If I pledge starting from November, is that going to work? Do I have to be a pledge for at least a couple months? Look, it's up to you. You don't have to pledge at all. I mean, if you just do one pledge and then you quit, man, the point is you supported me financially even once is just a wonderful, humbling thing. And you can help me even if you just do it once. We'll work together on it, in a champion in your name. So look, if you're thinking about joining the Patreon, absolutely, man. Don't feel like you have to support me indefinitely, that kind of thing. It was just the Patreon is basically just something for real fans of the series who have some spare cash and really want to help out, help me sort of transition to full time on this and make the series faster. And that reward tier was just basically something I sort of added for those who want to be immortalized in the game. So man, absolutely, if you're thinking about doing it, don't feel like you have to support me forever, that kind of thing. From Chaos Space Gamer, here's a question for you. More on the development side than the story of Swords and Sandals. If you go back and rework one game in the series except Swords and Sandals 1, which would it be and why? Good question. Good question, my friends. Each of them have some things that went well and some things that didn't go so well. I found Swords and Sandals 5, even with the Redux, I didn't do that very well. I wish I'd made a much better dungeon crawling part of the game. It was fun, but not as fun as I liked. I would have taken out all the arena stuff and just had it like a full-on cool roguelike game like Dungeons and Dreadmore or one of those kind of really cool games. But Swords and Sandals 5, even though I did a Redux, I wish I could Redux it again. So there you go. From Brian Byhan Sub-Zero, I think Swords and Sandals has an amazing storyline. All the wonderful factions have a big epic universe. So I'd be glad to have a book or a comics or a mini cartoon series of the heroes like the Chaos and John the Butcher. Is this possible? My friend, it is a great possibility. I'm writing the Tome of Lore, as I said. That's a big online document which will have all the sort of history and so on. It's still probably a year or two away from being completed. But there are plans one day for me to write a novel or a series of novels. It kind of depends on fan interest. And, everyone has a great novel in them. I'd really want to be, a bit more wealthy in terms of, being able to do this full time, to have the time to write a novel. But as I'm older, it'd be fun to do, man. And if a novel did well, let's have a TV show, a movie. It'd be great, Dream big, right? But yeah, a novel or even a comic book series would be a lot of fun. From Arnus Galsis, again, good to see you with multiple questions. Do you like the Fallout games from Bethesda? Haven't played them, but I've played most of the Skyrim, Oblivion, Arena, Daggerfall, those kind of games. And I have a love-hate thing with those. I really love the open freedom in those games, but I found that the characters are a little bit kind of generic. So love parts of them, don't love other parts. I love the early ones, though. The Daggerfall and Arena were crazy good. How many questions? 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, we got about 12 more questions. Gosh. From Aaron Buicks. Why is Antares in Swords and Sandals 2 a purple dude with a moustache? And so in the original Swords and Sandals 2, I hadn't really planned that he was undead. So he just looked like I needed to give him some face, because that's how the character system worked. So I just gave him a purple dude with kind of like dreadlocks and moustache. But maybe that's actually, I think we'll sort of retrofit that and say that's what he looks like when he's in, using his magic to cover his skeletal face, which is part of the helmet. Uses the power to do that. But he's actually a skeletal lich, because he's immortal, has this power to live forever type thing until killed. But his face has been ravaged by evil magics and so on. The necromancy's actually drained his face, so it's actually an illusion. The pretty face, he doesn't actually look like that at all. He was very handsome before he had the evil necromancy power. Why does Archfiend Zizabal look completely different in Crusader 3? In Crusader. Because I only had a limited amount of character assets for Swords and Sandals 2, so I just kind of used basic demon wings and the regular body. But when I drew Crusader, I was able to draw them much more like any, crazy demons. And so the one in Swords and Sandals Crusader is the official look for him. When is Swords and Sandals 6 coming out? And 2020 earliest. I'm hoping to be 18 months, but maybe longer. Hopefully not. Final one. What inspired you to make Swords and Sandals 1? I mentioned that a little bit earlier, but I was inspired by the Astro Boy cartoon, The Greatest Robot in the World, which is a robot fighting thing, even though there aren't any robots in this one. And I was also inspired by an old series of books called Tunnels and Trolls. So they had one that was an arena game book, and I was really inspired by that, and I started making text versions of that as a kid. And I've always just loved arenas and pro wrestling and combat, boxing, that kind of thing, one-on-one combat in a controlled environment. That's always just inspired me. And also ancient Roman history is also a big thing for me. So combine them all, and then all of a sudden that's Sword and Sandals. Do you have any tips for developers that are just starting their game development journey? And that's from Energy Man 100. And there's actually a response to that from Charlix, who says search on the video channel, there's more detailed material about it. And there is actually some detailed videos about that. I did a playlist called All Over the Joyce on game dev. Check that on my channel and you might find some helpful tips, because I spent quite a while talking about that. But in a nutshell, I would say pick a game making tool that is popular, because you get a lot of help on the internet for that, and when you get stuck you can look up a lot of answers. Game Maker, Unity, I haven't used Unreal so I can't recommend it. Even Construct and Godot, the new one, actually looks cool. So one of those 4 things I'd say fantastic for making games. Start small, get the core idea of what you want to make for a game, and just do, if it's don't make a Skyrim MMO style game as your first game. Just start with like a little, if you want to make a Sword and Sandals game, just have 2 characters. Don't even worry about the shops and the different weapons. Just work on the combat stuff. And then expand. Sword and Sandals 1 and Sword and Sandals 2 were the same game, but Sword and Sandals 2 expanded on the first one as I grew confident in my game development skills. Very best of luck, and I will talk more about game dev in the future. From Lobos das Neves. Here are my questions. Hi, Brazil. Yeah, Adrian Glassi, my composer from Brazil, is Brazilian, and amazing country. I'd love to go there, as I say about so many countries. But man, the world is a beautiful place. He had a lot of questions, so I'm going to try and go through with them quickly. Do Sword and Sandals Pirates and Crusader happen before or after Sword and Sandals 2? Pirates is before them all. It's a prequel to everything. And Crusader is after Swords and Sandals 2. Yes, that's correct. And before Sword and Sandals 3. Is the boss Undead Emperor Antares from Sword and Sandals 3 canon to the history? I don't know. I haven't quite retrofitted Sword and Sandals 3 yet. When I go through the Tome of Lore, I'm going to work on that one. I believe that one will actually be almost like a red herring. So it wasn't actually Antares. It was sort of like they managed to capture a memory of him. The robots were able to simulate him, but it wasn't actually the real one because he's dead and buried. Will I make a Sword and Sandals game based on Sword and Sandals 3? Because there wasn't an official sequel to it. Also, he's talking about the space one, I think. Sword and Sandals 6 will be the next one in the line that kind of continues on. The bit where they go off into space at the end of Sword and Sandals 3, I haven't figured out yet. What characters survived on Sword and Sandals 2 and 1 Redux? Any other characters other than Barguyarg, Sandalphon, and Antares? I'll have to go back and tell you because I can't remember off the top of my head, but most of them survived. Most of the arena champions, I've done it in such a way that although these characters die, they're such good magic and resurrection magic that if you're wealthy enough and if you're an arena champion, you're sponsored by the arena, you can use powerful resurrection magics, but only if you die in a certain way in battle. You can't fight old age and so on. But when we do the Tome of Lore, you'll be able to find out who is alive and who is dead. Why in the original Sword and Sandals 2 is he Chaos a boss bit, in the Redux he doesn't appear? Because the story changed. I didn't want him to be in the arena anymore. He loses the arena to Emperor Antares after Sword and Sandals 1. And Antares enslaves him, but he breaks free and does his own thing. But I also wanted to just get him out of the story for a little while. I think that was why I did it. Why in Swords and Sandals 2 Redux do none of the normal enemies have enchanted weapons? Probably a bug. Probably I forgot to turn on a flag. That's something I should fix one day. Why in Swords and Sandals 2 Redux is... in the first one is he purple. Why is he a skeleton in Pirates? So why is he in Swords and Sandals 2 a purple character? Why is he a skeleton? In Pirates, he hasn't found the magic elixir to make himself appear to be, human. Because he's actually a skeleton. What you're seeing is actually an illusion of purple skin and so on in Sword and Sandals 2. Pirates is set before all those games. In Sword and Sandals 2 Redux, the boss, Daughter of the Blades, does she have anything related to Lord Talahudin? Yeah, she's his granddaughter, I think. I think the granddaughter. It's either the daughter or the granddaughter. I have to go back. But yeah, definitely related. He's got 2 more questions. How in Sword and Sandals 1 Redux do the bosses have unique breastplates? I redrew them all. I actually redrew a lot of the armor and so on because I was using a different tooling system than original Flash, so I re-cleaned them up and so on. And what was my inspiration to create the bosses for the games? I've talked about this in a previous question, but it varies. They all based on many different factors, but I always just want to make them, one of them is a wizard, one of them is a knight, one of them is a barbarian. I kind of go from there. Good questions. Thank you for caring so much about the lore of Swords and Sandals. All right. We will take a quick break and we'll be back in 1 second to wrap this up with the last few questions. Wow. They're using the same trick. The same crap trick that I used before. All right. Home stretch here. Home stretch. All right. From Raphael Moloboko. I got a question about Sword and Sandals Pirates. My Android version is 5.1 and I'm trying to download, but it's not working. Unfortunately, I don't think that's going to work for you. Android 5 is probably 5 or 6 years old, so even if it did load up on your phone might be too old to run it. Unfortunately, it'd just crash and you wouldn't enjoy the experience. My apologies, but that's why those games are actually free to download, and then you can pay to unlock the full version, because I know that they don't always work on every version of the phones. Shadow Fight 2 Shogun Samurai says, make a multiplayer 5 vs 5. Yeah, maybe in the future. We'll see. From Mr. Meow Meow, he has two questions. In the next Sword and Sandals, could it be possible to join factions like the Templar Church or the Iron Republic, or some Hikayasa's loyalists who are trying to reform the Legion? Yeah, I'd love to have factions. I hadn't thought about them until now, but I think it's a great idea. Question 2, is there going to be mini games in Sword and Sandals 6? Probably not. I kind of, I don't like mini games. They're just, or it's more that I don't like them, I don't make them very well, I thought. Farid Abdu writes, I have a problem downloading Sword and Sandals Pirates on my Android device is not compatible. Yeah, if you can upgrade your version of Android operating system, you can get it to work, but then your phone might be too old, so you really want to be using Android 7 or later, but you can get it on your PC if you have a computer. You'd probably find it run a lot nicer. But thanks for trying anyway. From Dodux, will Sword and Sandals Crusader Redux come on mobile this year? I mentioned that earlier in this video. This is a long video. I apologize, guys. This has gone way out of hand. I had no idea there were so many questions. Yeah, we'll see. I'm going to do a poll later to see if I make Redux first or Sword and Sandals 6. I don't know. I keep changing mine every week. From Saddam Jamal, we've talked before about Arabic and Persians and Turkish culture and so on. He writes quite a long question. He wants to ask if there's any Arabic, Persian like armor, weapons, or spells planned in a future Sword and Sandals game. And could you add some, even though it doesn't fit the Gladiator theme, but Rome did conquer Carthage, you're exactly right, with Hannibal and everything. And there was Arab land north of Africa, depending on the time, southern Spain, and colonization. Spain was Islamic. Yeah, it was. There's some actual real Islamic influence in parts of Spain, with the Alhambra is a beautiful building in Spain, and the Alcazar and so on. So he basically wants to know, will I be adding a sort of Arabic style Persian culture to Sword and Sandals? And yeah, I have planned that because the lands in the south of the Takash Desert are sort of like a Persian culture, really, with Lord Talahuddin and the Door of the Blades and so on have that feel. And I would like to... there is actually a new arena champion coming out that me and one of the Patreons are working on, who I'm not going to spoil it now, but he is a prince from that area, and he's sort of got a real Persian feel to him, and you're going to love it. This, if you're interested in that sort of culture, he's going to sort of try and, build up the remnants of the what that land was before Arglax and the Beast Force sort of took over the area. So yeah, we are going to be bringing more of that, but I want to do it, tastefully. I don't want to just kind of have it, straight out of Aladdin or something like that. Prohine Gamer 2.5 writes, will Sword and Sandals 5 come later? Yeah, maybe 2020, maybe, hopefully. Some wavy boy writes, would you ever make an open world Sword and Sandals game? Yeah, I would. But only if I had millions of dollars, because these games, they take so long to make, and I've seen people try it and fail, and unless your name is World of Warcraft, chances are you'll fail at that. It's just too hard to make so much content. But Constellation Mirror will be a large single-player role-playing game in the style of sort of Ultima and Baldur's Gate and Divinity and that kind of thing, which will allow you to wander around Brandor. So hopefully you get a bit, a feel of the world. From Ilya Gurovich, who's a great guy and a wonderful fan and supporter of the series as a Patreon. Can I get your autograph? Man, of course you can. Yeah, I should just sign it digitally for you. That's a beautiful comment. Wizard Sagan writes, who is the best girl? Man, I don't even know what that means. It's pretty funny. Does he mean the best female arena champion or female in the series. There's a bunch of comments responding to that. Some people like Lumineshka, some people like Marie Dupont. No one really likes Jane Three Sheets. Haven't mentioned her, but Evil Ninja was sometimes a girl, sometimes a grandfather. They kind of switched it up. What you know, father and son, a father and daughter team. There are not enough women in Sword and Sandals, and I want to change that for Sword and Sandals 6. So I don't know who the best girl is. You tell me. The best girl is my wife in my life. You know, the only girl. The last question, and it's quite a fitting one, is from STAR, and he writes, rather existentially, why Swords and Sandals? Why indeed? Why Swords and Sandals and not any other game? I don't know. You tell me. I don't even answer. I love making the Gladiator games. I have fun making them. I love the world. I love the lore. I love the fans. I like Gladiator combat. I love the simplicity of it. I've made a lot of mistakes in the series. I know that. I want to get back on track and, really bring the next one out and make it the best one I've ever made. I say that every now and again, but I really mean it. But why Swords and Sandals? I ask you, why not Swords and Sandals? And on that note, we will leave that there. And we will do another question and answer series later this year, because it's been a real success. And I've enjoyed this time with you. This video has gone over an hour and way longer than I thought it was. And I should get on with programming Spartacus so I can get through it and get on to Swords and Sandals again. But thank you, everybody. Thank you for being fans of the series. Thank you to the Patreons who support me, to the wonderful community on Discord, and everybody on Twitter, and everybody that has bought the games, played the games, has nostalgic memories. You are what makes Swords and Sandals great. And with that, I shall see you again real soon. Bye for now.